Hello, hello. It's Michelle from the Strong and Simple podcast. And today I want to talk to you about a topic that can be a little controversial. And once again, if you've been listening to the podcast or following me on any sort of social media platform for a bit, then you know that I like to address things from a place of nuance. So this is more a conversation to let you know and inform you that you have options about this particular topic, and that just like all medical events and screenings and things, you have the right to give or not give informed consent. And the topic I want to talk about today is being weighed at the doctor's office. And I figured I would bring this up on the podcast this week as a little mini-sode because I had posted about my annual gynecologist visit and on social media the other day. Sorry, I just had a brain fart about the word gynecologist. And so I posted on Instagram about my visit and like a reminder, make sure you make your annual checkup and get things checked out. Preventative care, right? And then I had also posted like reminder, like if you feel uncomfortable being weighed at the doctor's, if this is something that is preventing you from making a medical appointment, you don't have to be weighed at the doctor. You have the right to decline being weighed. And I got a lot of comments back to me, a lot of DMs in response to this, mostly from folks about how once they learned that they no longer had to be weighed at the doctor's office every appointment, that how much that changed their anxiety and nervousness and even avoidance of going to medical appointments once they learned this. So I'm hoping that by bringing this to you all today, you can now make an informed decision when you go to the doctor's office about being weighed or not. And a little story time here is, for a very long time, I was one of many, many folks who avoided medical appointments, including the gynecologist, because I did not want to be weighed. And it would give me such terrible anxiety about being weighed that I would, if I knew an appointment was coming up, I would really try to dial in that, diet. I would try to lose those pounds. Like, I need to make sure that I weigh less than the last time I was at the doctor's office. And this is all just part of the disordered eating patterns that I was really in the throes of for most of my life, as an adolescent, as a young adult. And even now I'm still a work in progress, right? So if you are somebody who has been avoiding medical appointments or kind of spirals out with a weight loss goal or a body recomposition goal because you have to like get down to a certain weight before you can go to the doctor and be weighed in, I want you to know that you don't have to do that. Please, please, please. If you have access, I know it's really hard for some folks to even have access to affordable healthcare. If you're somebody who has that privilege, please take advantage of it, because preventative healthcare is one of the best ways to stay well, by being able to find things that might be wrong before they become untreatable or more difficult to treat. It's really important for you to be going to your exams and any sort of preventative tests on schedule. So mammograms, pap smears, all those things. Okay. So when you go to the doctor, there are definitely some things that weight and knowing your weight is important for medical purposes. So if you are going in for surgery and are going to have anesthesia, anesthesia is based on weight, right? So you're going to want to make sure you get the right dosage. So that's an important thing to be weighed for. Some medications are measured, like dosages are based on weight, we're going to want to make sure we're getting the right dosage of medication to make us feel well, right? So that is important. Sometimes other things, like if you are in treatment for an eating disorder or disordered eating, in certain stages of this, it's going to be important to monitor your weight. This should be done by healthcare providers who are certified and knowledgeable about treating eating disorders, so that it's done compassionately and in a caring way, and that you have the mental health support to support you with this experience, because it can be very, I'm going to say traumatizing for some folks to have to hear and see their weight and to even think about getting on the scale. So depending on where you are in that treatment and recovery, know that by seeing appropriately trained medical professionals can really help not only treatment for your eating disorders and disordered eating, but to make the experience better for you mentally and emotionally as well as physically. So know that if you are going to the doctor for any of those things, it can be important to have your weight. Now, for monitoring rapid weight loss or rapid weight gain, that might also be something that your doctors are looking for. However, if you are somebody who over the past 3 years, your pants, everything is the same size, you're kind of just, the normal fluctuations, you're not feeling bad in any sort of way. This could also be like, why do you need my weight? Like, I'm essentially the same size. There's no extreme weight loss or weight gain happening here that might be indicative of another problem that we need to investigate sooner, right? So weight is not a really great indicator of things that might be happening in our bodies. And, better measures of that are actually your blood pressure, your cholesterol levels, things like that. Getting your mammograms, getting your pap smears, checking things like that are going to be better indicators of something that might need to be treated or addressed rather than your weight. Your weight, it doesn't really tell a very good story about your health. That being said, your doctor might be insistent on you being weighed, right? And oftentimes you really just need to say, no, thank you. When I went to my appointment the other day, she said, well, why don't you just jump up on the scale? And I was like, no, thank you. And I'm lucky because the place where I go, my doctor's office, has never batted an eye or questioned me or anything like that. I also know that I have the privilege of being in a straight-sized body. I do not navigate the world in a fat body. So it is, I know that there is a lot of privilege there where I'm not going to be necessarily pressured into the weight, into the scale in the same way somebody in a larger body might be, because of the bias and stigma that does exist in healthcare. So that's another reason that I feel like it's important for me to decline, is so that it's not just folks, it doesn't become this perception or this myth that it's just folks in fat and larger bodies that are declining to be weighed, right? So that's a personal choice for me. And this is always going to be a personal choice for you. I'm just giving you a little bit of insight here, in case you are somebody who is like me and used to avoid or is avoiding the doctor's office because of stepping on the scale. You can also say things like, I choose to avoid being weighed unless it's medically necessary. What is the medical necessity of weighing me today? You can also write a note when you check in and say, I am declining to be weighed today. You can also say something like, this is really sensitive for me. I'm not comfortable with it. It's making me really anxious, etc. And then, if it becomes an uncomfortable conversation and then they want to do your blood pressure, Your blood pressure might be up a little bit from feeling anxious about, it's almost like we see, we do see medical professionals as like an authority, like an authoritative figure. And for many of us, especially women, it can feel really uncomfortable to push back or give consent or decline consent for things that we don't believe are necessary for us, which is why it's really important for us to be having conversations like this so that more people know that you do have the right for this, so that you can advocate for yourself in medical situations. So unless it is medically necessary, you do not need to be weighed. So if you have a sore throat and you think it's strep throat, you don't have to get on the scale for that. If you're going to be treated for COVID, you don't necessarily need to get on the scale for that, right? And there's another piece to this where if you are feeling like, let's say you've thrown away the scale and you've gotten rid of the scale, right? And you are living that no scale lifestyle and you're not worried about your weight, but then the thought of getting on the scale at the doctor's office is inducing anxiety. And this might be a point of view that some folks don't agree with. But if you are living a scale-free life, but then the thought of getting on the scale gives you such anxiety that you're avoiding medical appointments or you feel anxious going into the doctor waiting for this moment, then there's still some work that might need to be done mentally and emotionally around your body image and the power of that number on the scale. Because if you are okay not knowing the number on the scale, but then thinking about the number on the scale potentially not being what would be a quote unquote good number or might be a high number for you or whatever, and that produces anxiety, then you're not really living a life of freedom from the scale. The scale is still providing power over your reaction to what that number could be. You're still having an emotional connection to the meaning of that number. So if this is you, know that there is still work that you can do for yourself, with yourself, probably best done with a therapist, okay, around really letting go of what that number means to you and truly letting it go so that you could step on any scale at any time and it's not going to create an emotional moment for you. So this is where this nuance that I spoke about 10 minutes ago at the beginning of this episode comes in. And this is where this becomes controversial, I feel, because again, we see in social media and on podcasts and things like, no, you should get weighed at every appointment, or no, just decline. And I think that there's a lot of room here for more conversation about weight bias and stigma in healthcare and how people in certain bodies are treated differently than folks living in other bodies. How folks are denied healthcare because they are told to just lose weight first and then come back instead of actually addressing the issue. How folks their symptoms are ignored and just blamed on being fat or obese or having a certain BMI by medical professionals. And this does happen. Okay, so there are real serious systemic issues around weight that happens at medical appointments. There's also the challenges that folks can have around body image and their relationship with the scale that can make getting on the scale challenging, which can then prevent folks from going to medical appointments that might be necessary because they feel like I'm just going to be told to lose weight, or I'm just going to be ignored anyways. And then there are the folks like myself who just avoided because my relationship with the scale was still so intertwined that even though I wasn't weighing myself to avoid feelings of anxiety around the number, I hadn't truly until a few years ago really addressed the real detachment of my emotion and my connection to that number, to really feeling that the number doesn't determine my worth. Because I can say that, and I could say that, oh yeah, the number doesn't mean anything to me, but I would look at a scale and it would scare the shit out of me. I get emotional talking about this because it's true. And it's true for so many people that even though we push that scale into the back of our closet or we don't own it or whatever, as soon as we think about what that number might be, and we're then connecting a certain number and determining our worth, and our emotions come up in relation to that number, there's still work to do around our relationship with that scale. So, all of this being said, there are multiple reasons for why it could be important to be weighed at the doctor's office. However, it is not necessarily something that needs to be done at every appointment or even any appointment, depending on who you are and what your medical status is, what your appointment's for. And you don't have to consent to being weighed at a medical appointment. And this should be something that you can have a conversation with your doctor about. If your doctor does not speak to you in a place of empathy, compassion, curiosity, kindness, and coming at you, and this topic, not coming at you, but coming to you and at this topic from a conversational piece and not a, no, I'm the doctor, I say you need to be weighed. If that is what happens to you at the doctor, then it's time to find a new doctor. Because while a medical professional knows more about they went to school for this, they went to school for medicine, right? However, that does not mean that they should have power and authority over your autonomy of your body and making informed decisions that are best for you mentally, emotionally, and physically. So, my friends, I want to try to keep this as short as possible. It is a mini-sode, and I know this is kind of a loaded topic for a lot of folks, but I really think it's important to address because there are so many people who do not realize that you have the choice to decline being weighed. You have the right to ask questions at your medical appointments, and it's really, really important for us to recognize the amount of weight bias and stigma that is totally woven in and throughout our medical world, our systems of the medical profession, a lot of it driven by insurance companies. BMI is a whole other podcast episode. And how so much of that is driven by insurance companies, not actually medical evidence. So if you have questions, would love to hear from you. If you have comments, would love to hear from you. If this was helpful for you, would love for you to share this episode with your family and friends. And I hope that if you are in a place with the scale where you are still working on your relationship with it and disempowering the scale and its control over you, know that there is hope. There is help for you for this. And it's a journey and a practice. It's a journey and a practice, especially for those of us who have been in the cycle of dieting and certain images of what is a good body, quote unquote, not a good body, what is a worthy body, and so on. These, the ableism, the anti-fat bias, the fat phobia, that is just so nefarious, and it runs through everything, right? So know that there's hope. There are people who specialize in this, who specialize in treatment that you can reach out to for support. And, again, just to recap, if you are avoiding medical appointments or having anxiety about going to a medical appointment because of getting on the scale, you do have the right, no matter what size, body, or shape you are living in, you can decline being weighed. You can simply say, no, thank you. You can say, I decline being weighed today. You can tell them, this is a sensitive topic for me. I'm not comfortable with it. So any sort of variance of that. Okay. Ask questions. Why is it medically necessary for me to be for you to know my weight today? Open up the conversation with your medical professional. What is the purpose of this? I want to be knowledgeable about my treatment today, right? So I hope this was helpful. There's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot, it's a lot more than just say no versus just say yes. But I think it's important for folks to recognize that you have options. And when it comes down to it, it is your body, and you knowing that you have options is really empowering. So have a wonderful week, and we will see you, or you'll listen to us on the next episode. All right, friends. Thank you.